To shed some additional light on the process of categorizing, let me say a few words about the organ involved in it, the human brain. Aristotle's model of a category and the accompanying view of language as consisting of an independent semantic module and independent syntactic module calls for the brain functioning like a linear computer. There must be a linguistic syntactic module representing pure logic that operates on meaningless symbols forming sentence types. For instance, a noun, bird, plus a verb is singing. Next, there must be a semantic module. The information coded by the semantic module lets the speaker substitute symbols, bird is singing, with meaning the Aristotelian way. Contrary to such a model of brain functioning, it has been found using imaging technology that the way the brain functions is not so simple. Well, the left hemisphere works partially like that. It is analytic in nature, searches for detail, is good at abstract reasoning and cool logic. Yet, it encodes and stores not only the events that it experiences in the world, but also the logical interpolations, extrapolations, and inferences. The right hemisphere, on the other hand, is influenced by emotions and expectations. It's intuitive. It searches for a big picture to place the given element in. It's good at complex pattern recognition, such as recognizing faces. Knowledge in the right hemisphere is organized functionally in groups related to specific interaction types. So, it may be specially attuned to storing basic level terms. To recap, the brain does not always get reset to a zero state after processing a given language chunk, as it happens in a linear computer, but often modifies past predictions and expectations. To illustrate the point, let me ask you a few questions. What color are clouds on a sunny day? White. What color is a pearl? White. What color is a polar bear? White. What color is snow? White. What does a cow drink? Milk? Did you answer milk, as 80% of other respondents did? This is how the brain works. Now let me introduce another model of human categorization, which is in tune with what we know about the brain today. A procedural model of language by Dorotawzielinska. Zielinska proposed that when speaking, people categorize resorting either to encoding or selecting. Encoding is done with the help of sets of features defining either a prototype or an average category member. When selecting, Aristotle's or Roche's category models serve to select the best matching element out of the set of the elements the brain is currently thinking about. Selection is taking place in relation to the options generated by so-called communicative field. So, just as given a set of lines, 2 points suffice to identify a specific line, people can categorize, selecting among the options that come to one's mind by choosing the best matching item in the set of the items currently coming to one's mind. The result of any categorization is stored for a while in the brain as a separate entry, but it also impacts current average encoded value of the given linguistic item. To see how selective mode of categorization works, let us look at some examples. Let's start with accounting for the meaning of the verb to dust. Why to dust furniture doesn't mean to put dust on furniture? Well, in real life, the only action related to dust and furniture is removing dust. Since people do not put dust on furniture or anything else on purpose, the verb to dust is sufficient to select the only action related to dust in the context of furniture there is. Now consider the meaning of the preposition on, used in the phrase a fly on a ceiling. Note that the fly at stake is, literally, under the ceiling. If we consider the situations related to flies and ceilings, we see that flies either fly some distance under a ceiling or sit on the surface of the ceiling. Therefore, if we use the phrase on the ceiling for the fly on the surface of the ceiling, which by the way resembles the fly on the wall, that's why it works so well, and we keep the phrase under the ceiling to refer to flies some distance under the ceiling, we end up with an efficient way of differentiating between the two types of situations mentioned. And now let us look at the meaning of the preposition on in the phrase people on the train. People on the train are on the train for, but also in a train. Note, however, that hypothetically, there could be people on the roof of the train, James Bond being one of them. So the preposition on can serve to single out the situation of people inside the train only because we do not need to talk efficiently about people traveling on the roofs of trains. Actually, either preposition on and in works just fine to denote people on the train. Which one will become the conventional choice depends on the similarity of choices already made in relation to other related situations, means of transportation by a given community. Interestingly, 80% of English speakers says on the train, while 20% says in a train. Other languages choose either the preposition in on that occasion or on. What is it like in the language you speak? Next, let us try to account for the difference in size between a little mouse and a little star. Encodingly, we cannot. On the selective mode of language use, the source of the difference is clear. On one occasion, we are selecting between mice, on the other, between stars. Now let us move on to a blue eye and a red eye. Note that each time it is a different area of the eye that the respective adjective modifies. Blue selects out of the eyes with irises which can be brown, green, blue, or gray. In the case of red eyes, the adjective red differentiates between visibly healthy eyes that has white whites and eyes of a sick person who has red or yellow whites. Most of the time, the type of social interaction you are engaged in tells you what your choices are, what your brain is thinking about. If you are talking to a doctor or to your mother concerned with your health, the phrase red eyes will be selecting between healthy and sick eyes. If you are talking to a photographer, red eyes will mean something completely different, the situation, when there is a red spot in the center of the irises in the picture. And they are not merely the defining features of red and eye that convey it, but the lexeme red and eye select that meaning from what we know about the world and what our brain is focused on at the moment of speaking. The same holds true for a red rose, a red bus, and any other red thing. The adjective red does not define them, but lets us select between types of objects we know. Note also that in the case of a red rose, it is only a small part of the flower that is red. The rest is green. So, on an encoding view, a red rose is a bad member of the category, defined by the cross-section of red things and roses. It should rather be called a green rose. Yet, we use the term not so much to describe as to select between different roses, in the sense that is meaningful in different situations, functionally. To recap, although it seems at first that modifying a noun with an adjective of color is a matter of considering the cross-sections of the features defining the noun and the color, yet clearly typically this is not the case. Look also at a red car, a red bike, and so on. Only specific parts of a car and a bike are red. If we say that red selects from possible eyes, cars, bikes, and roses, everything works. Next, consider a computer game. If you mentioned a computer game when talking to a person who has never used a computer, they will likely have no idea what you're talking about. Yet, if you show them the activities you're involved in when using the computer, such as writing an essay, surfing the internet, reading an e-paper, coding a program, playing a computer game, that person would certainly be able to pick a computer game by virtue of its being more like a game than the remaining activities are. And one more example. Consider metaphorical use of language. On the view proposed, we know that we mean metaphorical because it's the best matching object for activity among those coming to one's mind in a given situation. With time, if repeated, such uses may get encoded in our brains, as was the case with the flower bed. It became a dead metaphor. Before that happens, on many occasions several options are used selectively to denote the same referent. For instance, before the first plane started to fly, to identify this activity, people tried out both flying and sailing.